When I watch a lot of movies or read a lot of stories, like certain things that I've heard or learned influence my enjoyment of the movie, and I hope to help you guys enjoy these movies more as well. So that's why I'm making this video. So let's go. Okay, so I'm gonna post the picture right here. I guess I'll have it primarily on me, or I don't know how to switch it. Okay. So I guess I'll switch back and forth. So this is the list for things that I want to talk about today. So I'll just refer to this list. I'm sorry if I don't get to your comments because I'm going to be like on a monologue. But first of all, we have hyenas and invasive species. So okay, so in The Lion King, I really like this. I didn't notice this when I was watching it as a kid, but when I just watched it like yesterday, basically the whole idea of like Scar bringing in the hyenas into the Pride Lands, and like you know how the Pride Lands were like this really nice, um, like green and full of water. Like it had a lot of water and it had trees and everything, and it had a bunch of animals, and everything was alive. Um, but then when Scar brought in the hyenas kind of like ruined the entire territory. And the movie paints it as because the hyenas they never know when to stop eating and they have insatiable hunger. But this is actually what happens a lot of times when you introduce invasive species. So the hyenas, because there's so much prey for the hyenas, in the Pride Lands, the hyenas get to take over and kind of, as they eat more, they reproduce more, and then all those hyenas have to eat too, and then eventually you kill off all the animals because when you introduce an invasive species into a territory, there isn't a natural predator for those invasive species unless the lions were to hunt them. But then, in the movie, Scar was keeping the lionesses from hunting the hyenas, and so you ended up with a dead zone Pride Rock, where there wasn't any food left, right? And this relates to a lot of other stuff, but let's talk about the other more interesting stuff. So I want to talk about Hakuna Matata and the whole idea of, um, the carefree, like worry free. There's no worries. Everything is chill. Don't think about it if you can't help it. Like that idea is like when I watched it as a kid, it was really great. And I think there's a really good time for it, and that time is, in human life. It's when you're kind of like in your preteens up until you're done with high school. Like up until the end of high school, you are in your Hakuna Matata phase, and that's like the naive, carefree phase. And that's when you don't have like responsibilities that you really take, and you're just having fun. And to a degree, when you're a kid, that's fine because you can't do that much, and you have to kind of like get socialized and learn how to play and learn how to like act in the world, and you can't let like all the stress kill you. But then at some point, the Hakuna Matata phase kind of like it has to die because at some point you gain responsibility and you're responsible for a lot of things. Whether it's your own life, like when you become an adult, a lot of people, unless they still live with their parents or they're supported by their parents, they have to make their own money or else they'll die because they can't live off of nothing. So they have a job responsibility. They have responsibility, in terms of relationships. When they get into a relationship with like a girl, or a girl gets in a relationship with the guy, both parties have responsibilities towards each other. And then the third thing is you have a responsibility towards, what was it? I forgot my train of thought, but basically, you can't live your adult life in a Hakuna Matata phase because you're gonna end up, um, losing your purpose, and you're not gonna be able to support yourself, right? I can type these things a lot better, but, I just wanted to try practicing talking through it because I can write like a whole essay on this. Now the next thing which is related is Nala and the judging female archetype. So in the movie, and this like phenomenon in the movie is so important because it like really reflects like most people's experiences, or at least most. Well, it's focused on the guy, but it really focuses and makes it clear what the situation is. So Simba is in his Hakuna Matata phase, where he's just playing around with Timon and Pumbaa, and then suddenly he sees he's chill, he's carefree, there's nothing bothering him, and then suddenly Nala comes, and this is when he realizes, like, oh no, like what, like I'm so pathetic, because Simba doesn't have, he hasn't taken responsibility for what he was supposed to do, and he hasn't fallen into his destiny, which I have a problem with that idea a little bit, but I'll talk about that later. But Nala basically acts as the ideal, like the female like judgment on his male like conscious, because okay, like in animal behavior, basically what happens is like the males are, or females are choosier than males because females bear the burden of pregnancy, and so they are more selective of males than males are selective of females. So what happens is females will choose the best males, whatever best means, in their context, and then so males strive to become the best males, and they have the sense of responsibility that drives them to achieve better things, right? And so Simba's like humbling around in this Hakuna Matata phase. He's not really caring about anything. He's not really learning. He's not really achieving anything. Nala comes, and then Nala like tells him like, "Oh, what are you doing? We need you. Like, we need your help. Scar is taking over the Pride Lands, and everything is going to die." So, Simba says, "Oh no, I can't go back. I'm incompetent." And so, there's this like look of in the real life movie, it's really done badly, but in in the animated movie from 2000s, it was done really well. Like Nala gives him this look of disappointment, and Simba's like confused and like disappointed in himself, and it's really apparent. And then play around, and there's like this romantic scene where they sing the "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" song, and basically what happens is like they do fall in love, but then Nala realizes like how pathetic he is, and he realizes how pathetic he is, and he can't do anything about it. So he's like kind of like frustrated at himself, and Nala's just like, I'm gonna leave because I still need to go back and help the Pride Lands. And so Nala leaves, and then Simba's like, oh no, like I I'm an adult lion now, and I still don't have any responsibility. I have no path in life. I'm just playing around with my friends. And so the other thing that's important in that scene is that Timon and Pumbaa realize that because Simba has found his female companion, they have this like despair. It's like, oh, our trio is done. It's only gonna be two of us now, and that is a lot like what happens with a lot of friend groups in real life. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I definitely see this when you're like more like kids. You play together in a group, or a lot of people play together in groups, and then suddenly one person from the group start leaving, another person leaves, and why do they leave? It's because they found like someone, they're dating someone. So suddenly your friend is dating someone, your friend can't hang out with you anymore, and then you're kind of like sad and lonely by yourself, and you're like, oh, where's my girlfriend, or where's my boyfriend? My friend is already dating someone, and I'm lonely now because I don't have my friend. And then so through all that stuff like kind of coerces people into building the desire to take responsibility and kind of like find a more meaningful purpose in life other than just Hakuna Matata, right? And so like all that is based on, like, all these things work together, and like I think it's so important that they had that scene with Nala and Simba, and they had like a kind of like, they kind of had like a sexual tension, but then they also had like the scene of like Nala judging Simba very harshly for not adopting his responsibility. Okay, so re- also related to that is the idea of the stars and the ideal. So like so there's this, Jordan Peterson has like made me realize so many things, and this is one of the big ones. Is like, why do we always like look up at our ideals? Like, why do we say like, oh, God is in the sky, or why do we say the stars are our ancestors, or why do we say like why do we look up for hope? And it's because we when we look up at the stars at the night sky, we're kind of like projecting our ideal onto the night sky, and that ideal is coming down on us to judge us. So just like Nala judging Simba, and the stars in the Lion King movie judging Simba as the paternal father, you have we project our ideal on top to the sky, and the sky kind of like judges us and makes us feel like, oh, we're so small. We need to do more, and we are. And this is like something that happens throughout humankind. Like we just across different cultures, people always look up to the sky. Like every single religion, their god is like in the sky. Their god is never like in hell or like down below. And there's this idea of like heaven or like the higher ideal that everyone has to strive for. And so that's why we have the idea of the stars. And I think the Lion King does that really well. Instead of putting it on religion in Lion King, they have it as the ancestors, which is essentially a functional religion because because Simba is like he's missing his dad, and his dad is like his ultimate ideal. Everything he does since his childhood is because he wants to be like his dad and not like a little cub. And so he loses that when he goes through his Hakuna Matata phase, but then he gets it back when he sees the stars, and that I forgot the monkey's name, or the baboon's name, but then he guides Simba to take responsibility again, and from that Simba kind of realizes he needs to do something, so he chases after Nala, and he goes back and realizes he has to help the Pride Lands, right? All right, so next thing is the food line versus the circle of life. Okay, so this is kind of like back to biology. We did our like little philosophy stuff. It's kind of random. I kind of have it interspersed, but the food line versus the circle of life. So in the movie, I don't think they did this in the animated movie, but in the new movie, they talk about this food line and the circle of life. So in biology, we call the circle of life more like the food web, and the early version of this was the food chain, which is when you have like a line, like lions, they eat antelopes. Antelopes eat like smaller like shrubbery, and then the shrubbery gets energy from the sun, right? So that's a food chain. But a food web is when all these things are interconnected, because you can have like the lions eating multiple things, and then those multiple things can be eating like the grass or the other like little smaller things, and then the lions, when they eventually die, they get eaten up by the detritivores, which are basically the scavengers or like bacteria that kind of like digest their dead bodies. And so everything is connected. So I think it was interesting how they set it up, because they said at first Mufasa taught Simba that it's a circle of life, and that's like the right idea. And then you have Timon and Pumbaa stating that, oh no, it's a food line, because because the things you do don't affect us. But then they realized that they were wrong, and so they realized that the circle of life idea was right. And so this like realization is like, hopefully when people are watching it, it teaches them like it kind of like acts as a simulation for them. Like they think, oh, this is what it is, and then they're taught, oh no, it's not. But then in the end, they realize that it actually is, right? Okay, yeah. So I'm really not used to talking about things like this, so I'm sorry for like pausing and stuttering. I'm not very good at articulating in person compared to when I type. Like I have a bunch of like 1,000 thoughts in my head, but I can only say so many things at the same time, right? Okay, so the next thing is the lion prize and why there are so few female lions, or so few male lions and so many female lions, right? So I don't know if you guys noticed this, but in the movie there's only Scar and Mufasa as the male lions, and then the rest are all female lionesses, right? And so this is well, this is kind of both, but like you basically have in animal behavior, we have this idea of, okay, most animals are actually not monogamous. So for lion prides, again, you have the males competing for dominance, and you have the females selecting for the most fit male, whatever fit means, right? And so in Lion King, they don't really talk about this, but basically what happens is in every single lion pride, you're gonna have maybe like 50% male, 50% female, but then the males are going to compete amongst each other, and the females are going to select the best male. And so in the end, as you can see in the movie, the female selected Mufasa. So Mufasa became the king, and he became the male of the lion pride. And so Scar was relegated to being like the side, like not really part of the pride. He has his own little layer, and that kind of reflects actual male prides, because in real male prides, or in real lion prides, they actually have like only one male or only very few males, and then like a bunch of females. And these lionesses, they actually do most of the hunting, right? I'm talking about this point down there. Sorry, I'm skipping around, but basically lionesses, they do hunting in groups. So the females work together and they hunt in groups, whereas the males, they hunt by themselves. And why this happened, it all goes back to sexual selection, because the males are competing to see who can be the best male, right? And the females, they only care about surviving, because the females, they get the choice of the males. The males need to be the ones to become dominant over the other males. So the males compete for the other males, and they hunt by themselves so that they can win the competition. And then the females, they work together to stay alive and stay fed, right? And after that, in the end, the females choose the best male, and they live around him. And the male actually mates with multiple females, and the females can mate with other males too. And it's not as monogamous as like people would like to believe. And they don't talk about this because it's a Disney movie. So, and we have, our culture enforces monogamy. So, yeah. Next point. Okay, so Mufasa's failure. So this is a kind of simple point. But basically, the entire idea of Mufasa, the entire reason why Mufasa gets wrecked is because he's too naive, and he lets Scar stay. So usually in male prides or in lion prides, they don't. A lot of times they'll kick the other males out because they want all the females for themselves, right? And so, Mufasa says no. Scar's my brother, so he's gonna stay as long as I'm king, right? And so he keeps Scar, but Scar is like perennially plotting to avenge his own loss by killing Mufasa and killing his son. And so, unfortunately, Mufasa's too naive to realize that. And so he keeps Scar nearby, and so Scar fails like 2 to 3 times at getting back at Mufasa, but then he finally succeeds by leading Simba into that stampede thing, right? And so, like, this entire idea is like, it's kind of analogous to the idea of keeping your friends close, and like keeping your enemies away from you. Like, you do not want to welcome unwelcome visitors, because so like, this is actually a problem in like Europe right now, and it's also a part of problem in some parts of America, and people don't like to talk about this, but it's really important. So like in Europe right now, what's happening is that they're accepting a bunch of like refugees or immigrants from other countries, from like Middle Eastern countries, I think. And the problem is that they have like conflicting ideologies and conflicting ways of life and religions. And so when you have mass immigration of people who, I think it's like the Islam religion. And so if they're living in Europe, their ideals kind of like really conflict with the European ideals. And so you end up in a lot of trouble. I guess I don't really want to talk about this too much because it's too controversial, and this is just supposed to be a Lion King analysis movie or analysis video. But basically the idea is, if you keep guests that you can't really trust to keep you safe, and like not like mess with the status quo, you're gonna end up probably regretting it. And so there's that idea. Okay, the next one is so we're gonna talk about the Stampedes now. So the Stampedes, this is how Mufasa dies, right? So basically what happens is, I talk about this a lot in my biology class at the end of class because it's really funny, or it's really interesting. Those, I don't know what those are called, bison, but the bisons are they're basically, they always travel in groups. Why do they travel in groups? Because when they're trying to escape predators, the predators kind of run at them, and then if they're by themselves, it's easy for the predator to just surround them and kill them. If they run in stampedes, they can overrun the predators or they can outrun the predators, and at most you have some of the bison on the side will die, but the bison in the middle are safe. So you always guarantee that some people will survive by traveling in a stampede. And so maybe they circulate and they rotate whoever's inside, or maybe whoever gets inside first gets to win and gets to not be eaten. But stampedes are like used by so many animal species to either hunt or to travel or to like avoid predators, right? And so in this case, I don't know if you guys noticed, but basically what happens is Scar works together with the hyenas and they start a stampede. So they probably have the hyenas or Scar like working together. They gather the bison, and then Scar leads Simba into that valley of death. And then in this valley of death, the bison are like all around feeding or something, and then suddenly they start chasing the bison, and so the bison are really scared. Their natural instinct is to run in a stampede. So one of them starts running, everyone follows. So if you chase one of the bison into the valley of death, suddenly all the bison are going to the valley of death. And so Simba's there by himself, practicing his really weak little whimpering roar. And suddenly he realizes that everything's shaking because all these bison are stampeding and they're going to kill him, right? And so he climbs to this top of the tree. There's a long-ass train of bison because there are just so many of them, right? And so Scar and the hyenas probably gathered all the bison to make sure that this would work out, right? And so they chase the hyenas. They scare the hyenas, and the hyenas start going down the valley of death. Simba's kind of hanging there on the tree by himself, and he's gonna die. And then Scar goes back to Mufasa, tells Mufasa, "Oh, you need to help. Simba's gonna die." And so Mufasa's like, "Oh yeah, I need to help my son," even though this is really stupid because he's probably not gonna be able to survive being inside a stampede, right? And so Mufasa goes and saves Simba. Even he goes through the stampede. And obviously, like, if he were by himself and he were hunting, it would be so easy for him to just catch one and eat it, right? But then he's trying to save Simba, and so he has to go through the stampede. So he's in danger of getting stampeded himself. And so he goes and saves Simba, puts him somewhere safe, and he tries to get up, but then Scar pushes him down, and he dies because he falls into the stampede, and there's no way he's going to survive a bunch of bison stepping over him repeatedly. Okay, maybe I need a break. I need water. Right. And so actually in ecology you actually see this, that like lions hunting groups, bison running groups, like elephants will run in groups too. What else? Like birds will fly in groups, but birds fly in groups for a different reason, because sometimes they're trying to avoid predators. Other times birds are flying to make it easier for themselves, because when one person flaps their wings, it makes it easier for the other birds to fly because of the air draft. Fish also do this, so they kind of like group up together and try to avoid predators, or they confuse the predators by swimming really fast together as like a single organism. Now, let's talk about the last thing, which is film theory. Right, so film theory, so I learned this in my film class at UCLA, but it made me appreciate so many films so much more. So I'm going to talk about this with you. So in a lot of films, there's this comfortable cycle that it's repeated a lot, and this cycle works because it's like an archetypical hero story. So in the beginning, you have someone is given a responsibility or destiny, and they don't want it, or like they're a child, so they can't really deny or accept it, right? So in this movie, you have Simba. He gets his destiny preset. The Rafiki holds him up to the entire Pride Lands, and he's like, "This is your new king," right? Simba's just like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just a newborn. And then like Mufasa and I forgot the mother's name, but they're like watching proudly as Simba forcibly gets his destiny, right? And so he gets his destiny suddenly, and then they time skip into the comfy ordered world. So in this last point, they have Simba is like a cub now, and he kind of growing up. He's in a comfortable world. The Pride Lands are safe. He's protected by his parents. Everyone's loves him. None of the animals are trying to kill him, and everything is fine. But he goes out and looks for trouble because he decides, oh, this is too easy for me. I need to challenge myself, right? Because I need to become, and this is part of the whole male dominance thing. He says, he basically goes out to try to find trouble, try to find challenges. He wants to learn how to improve himself and not be the little cub. He wants to be seen as an adult, right? And so he goes and does that in his comfy ordered world, but he's kind of like, he's naive and he's innocent, and I don't think his parents did a good job of teaching him to prepare for when he has to take responsibility at the end, right? Even though they tell him you're gonna be king. Okay, so eventually he strays too far. He finds this new chaotic, dangerous world, which is when Scar tells him about the elephant graveyard, and he goes there. He thinks, I'm fine. Like I'm gonna be the king. This is easy for me. So he goes there by himself or with Nala, and then he realizes, oh no, there are hyenas. These hyenas are gonna kill me, right? And so the hyenas almost kill him, but then his dad comes in and saves the day. Okay, so that's the new dangerous chaotic world that he finds himself in, and he realizes that, oh no, I can't. I'm actually not that powerful, right? And so his dad gets mad at him and talks about like how he has to be safe and everything like that. But he experiences this new dangerous chaotic world. But then after that, that was only a preview. But then after that, when Scar actually kills Mufasa, then that's when he really enters this new dangerous chaotic world. And so he runs away. He blames himself, and he tries to find. He just kind of like lets himself die. But then he gets rescued by Timon and Pumbaa. Right. And so that was like a fortunate Deus Ex Machina, because like in a lot of other movies they kind of have to like bear the burden themselves and fix themselves. But in this new movie, he goes through this Hakuna Matata phase, and so that is actually the false happy, or the false ending, in which, so in an alternate universe, the movie could have ended with Timon, Pumbaa, and Simba just living happily in their like luscious, grubby forest, right? And maybe Nala could have come by. Nala would have decided to stay, and then they would have been happy forever after, right? But that's the false happy ending. But in a lot of movies, they don't just stop at the false happy ending. They actually have a doom gloom stage, which is the lowest point in the movie. So the lowest point is actually not when Mufasa dies. The lowest point is when Simba he goes through his Hakuna Matata phase, and then Nala comes by, judges him, and then he's feeling like really disappointed in himself. Nala feels disappointed in him. He feels like there's nothing he can do. He still blames himself for his father's death, and he's just looking up at the sky. He's like, what can I do, right? And so that's like the doom and gloom. In a lot of other movies, it's way worse actually, but in this movie, it's kind of there. And then the renewal happens when he finds his meaning again, when he finds his purpose, and he kind of resets his mind, says, I need to do something again. Like I need to fix this. And that's when we reach the climax, which is when he confronts Scar. Now in this movie, he kind of does a bad job of confronting Scar because he's kind of still weak, and Scar kind of like manipulates him into thinking, oh, it's still your fault. Like your father would have never died if you weren't born or whatever, right? And so I would have liked it if Simba like realized that earlier, and like realized that Scar manipulated him and kind of fought back better. But then in the end, Scar's stupid, and he reveals that he's actually the one who kills Mufasa, and so Simba's like, oh hell no, I'm gonna kill you now. So basically that happens. And so after that, Mufasa ends up killing Scar accidentally, and then the new cycle begins. So the new cycle is basically when he and Nala, they have a kid, and then he and Nala, their kid, goes through the same ceremony that Simba went through when he was a kid. And so that's the new Destiny preset for the next movie. And so that's when Simba's son is going to be the king, right? And so like all that, this is like in the Avengers when like Tony Stark he dies, but then he gives his system to Spider-Man, right? He gives a system to Peter Parker, and then Captain America, he retires and he lives out to his old age, and he gives his shield to the Falcon guy, right? And all this is it's giving a new destiny to a new generation of heroes, or a new generation, so that you can start the cycle again, because that's the entire cycle. That's what humans. That's the human story. The human story is we have our destiny, and we go through a life of meaning and responsibility, and then we bear children, and we give them the same responsibilities, and that is all based on evolutionary biology, because that entire archetype is based on the need for survival, and the need for survival is based on the fact that people who did live this out, or organisms, animals that did live this out, they succeeded and reproduced and had more successful children than organisms who did not. So the organisms who didn't live this out, they died off, and so that means only the organisms who did want to reproduce, and live successful lives stayed. And so this happens even now. So like, for example, like if you're asexual, and you, or like if you don't have kids, you're not going to pass down your genes, and you're not going to pass down your culture as well. And so this entire story is kind of like, it's like a framework for like evolutionary biology, and like everything is just philosophy, and everything is like all like, everything works because of natural selection. So I think I'm done. I wish I could have done that a lot better, but thank you for listening to my analysis of Lion King. And I'll read the comments, and I'll probably upload this onto YouTube. So I'll probably link that in the description, or in my bio, or on my story. So that's pretty much it.